Hello, everybody. It's Grace Bell. Welcome to Eating Peace this week. Fear is one of the greatest forms of contribution, really, to eating off balance, but really doing any kind of behavior off balance, especially stored fear, remembered fear, fearful things that we have in our minds and in our thoughts, even if they aren't happening in the environment or in our lives in the moment. There's something that's gone on that happens with the human brain when a really frightening thing happens. And I'll talk about that in a minute, about what really frightening has to look like. But this fearful experience that we've had that gets sort of stored and filed and remembered. Love that word, remembered, taking parts of something and reshuffling and putting them back together again, which is just like what a memory is. So something happens, fearful things happen. Since we are young, there's a response called fear, an experience of fear as a human being, part of the human condition. But then how this fear contributes to eating off balance or doing any compulsive behavior off balance. Fear maybe is like a root kind of core place of such incredible discomfort for humans in so many situations that will do anything to get away from it or crush it or try to fix it or destroy it. And what I have found in the process of compulsive behavior is that that's exactly what we're trying to do. At least that's certainly what I was trying to do. And it's not necessarily very successful. We've all heard about the invitation to turn towards your fear and take a look at it and be with it. But oh, so difficult. How? How do I do that? So I wanted to share with you a couple of stories that happened for me that were really significant and life-changing. The first was being in individual therapy. I was sent to many therapists by my parents and my family. I had a really supportive family. So lucky and so privileged to have that. So I went to get help, and I really did see quite a few people over my years of struggling with eating issues at the level that I had it at. And I had dropped out of college, and I was seeing somebody who was more trained in the old-fashioned Freudian level, where you come 3 times a week. I know my father had a furrowed brow and just thought, how can I ever afford this, to have my daughter go to therapy 3 times a week, but we'll try it for a little while. I'll take out a loan. I went to that therapist, and there was one point or one moment in the experience of being with her, and I think I went like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. I mean, I went 3 times a week for an hour. I refused to lie down. I didn't like that. I could have done that if I wanted to, like you see in the movies, in the old-fashioned movies. But I was like, no, that's good. That's just too weird. I wanted to stay seated, which I also had the option of. I remember that well. But one time, once I had gotten a little more comfortable in speaking and talking and sharing with her, she asked some really good questions. And we all know powerful questions are amazing. So she had asked some great questions, and I was sharing with her how miserable I actually felt, and how I felt hopeless and so frightened about things that had happened in the past, or so frightened about my success in the world. I began to cry. It was one of the first times that I was really crying in her presence, because I really contained and held a lot of my emotions in, which is typical for people with compulsive behavior. All right, so what happened is I was looking down at the floor, and I looked up and looked at her. There was a big window that I would look out of sometimes too. And I saw a tear coming down her nose. And I was just, it almost like stopped me short. She was moved by my tears and my expression. She was moved to tears herself. And there's something about seeing that. It's kind of like, I don't think you're supposed to do that if you're a therapist. You're supposed to remain very neutral and calm and relaxed and, blank face. Um, that stopped me short, and I felt really listened to and heard. Very powerful moment, a turning point in my sense of a relationship with her. I would take in more what she was sharing, and just something happened with the way I was in her presence that I felt more trusting that she was really listening. I then, not too much longer later, I found a group therapy. I was ready for a group therapy. I first went to a therapist that always conducted groups, and I saw her for a little while by myself. But then she invited me into the group. And when I was in the group, I was so silent. I did not speak for 6 months in that group. It was not a group for people with eating issues or eating disorders or anything to do with even addiction of any kind or compulsion. It was just a general group for the walking wounded, like people that were coping reasonably well, that were working, that could pay for the group. I barely felt like I could fit in. And there were 10 people in the group. It felt like, quite a large family and 2 therapists. And I was silent as can be. I would go into that group and I would be fascinated and watching and listening, but I would not say one single word. Maybe have an expression on my face, or, I was just constantly nervous. I felt like I was sweating almost every group. I got a little more relaxed. And then at some point, 6 months into going and hardly saying a thing, the therapist turned to me and said, "Before we even start group tonight, I want to ask Grace a few questions. And then we'll move into our usual activities and people can decide, what they want to work on and what they want to talk about. Grace, we have not heard from you at all. We don't know you. You're not sharing yourself. You're not sharing your fears and your doubts, your dreams, what you're here for, what you want to take a look at. We don't know you." There's a certain sense of control and fear in the not sharing itself, in keeping so closed. And we want you to get what you came for, basically, is what she was saying. And I was stunned. I almost froze in my tracks like deer in the headlights. But she began to ask me a few questions, and so did some other people in the group, which is all attention on me. And that was the beginning of a major turning point of sharing my own inner world. I felt like I was the worst person and the sickest person and the grossest person in that whole group because I had eating issues. I ate and I vomited and I over-exercised and I freaked out about food all the time. So I thought, these people are normal people. They don't have that. I found out that wasn't even true. That the quote-unquote normal people of the world with food and eating also had issues and fears and worries and strange ways that they were with food and what they worried about and what they couldn't eat or could eat, or compulsive thinking about weight and losing 10 pounds constantly for the rest of their lives. So we were all not so separated or dissimilar as I thought. And I began to feel more like a part of the normal human being. In fact, in that group is where I first had a really, my symptoms of wild eating grew farther and farther and farther apart and eventually dissolved. And I still worked for a few more years on relaxing my mind when it came to what my body looked like and what eating should look like and what I should and shouldn't eat, and just being afraid of being full or afraid of being too hungry and all of it. That all continued as a practice for a long time into my life. But so sharing here today these 2 moments that were really effective around my experience of fear was the common denominator is I was in the presence of other people and they were listening to me. I was being honest. I wasn't thinking I have to do this all by myself, all alone. I have to figure this out, and then I'll go out in the world and have a good life. I was just there, messy, ugly, exposed as I felt, but being there and being honest. And the compassion and love I felt, just a simple acceptance of others being willing to hold still and listen and not give advice and not direct me, or not sound like they were judgmental, even if they had some judgmental thoughts. I felt truly and deeply accepted and heard. That is a key way to approach fear. So we often feel afraid of being afraid. Fear is so much something that I don't want to do, that I don't want to feel, that if I ever felt it, I was frantic. And of course I went straight to the food. I wanted to eat like crazy or starve myself and control myself by going on a diet. And another option of to work with fear is also just freezing, paralyzed, not even knowing what to do at all, just staying stuck in this one spot. And to be able to begin to look at my own fear was incredibly powerful for shifting my experience and my story of food and eating and the way I was with it. To dissolve fear, we no longer have the urge to escape or soothe or frantically reach for something that will help calm us down or ground us, whether it's food or whatever it is. So today, my invitation is to just be open. You don't have to share all your fears with your neighbor immediately. Just be open to taking a look within yourself at what you have been afraid of in your life. What has really scared you? What scares you right now? What's one of your biggest fears in life? And it may be around food and eating and your body, but often these fears mean something else as well. Like why I'm so afraid that I'll never get over my eating issue is because then I'll never be able to be close and intimate or honest with another person. I won't ever be able to find love. I won't ever get success. I won't ever be able to make money. It's like just seeing what it is you feel deeply afraid of. And it could be also what has happened in your life in the past. I had a terrible accident, or I lost somebody, or I was broken up with. And a lot of times, many of us have experienced a change in the diet when somebody breaks up with us. I heard somebody once call it the divorce diet. Isn't that funny? It just means you begin to starve yourself because you're so upset. So it's just watching something that maybe has really frightened you about the past or what you feel afraid of in the future, and they almost always go together. If I have felt really terrified about something from my past, even all the way back to early childhood, I often carry it forward into my life. If it is not resolved, if it's something that I believe happened to me and it was terrible, I'm probably going to be braced against that happening again to me in the future. Fear of criticism. The thing that I wanted to put on pause that I just barely mentioned a little bit earlier was it doesn't have to be this huge thing. Your fear can be something that is just very, very minor, that feels minor. You might even judge it as too minor, like, oh, my best friend, said something rude to me and I'm freaking out and, eating everything in my refrigerator tonight. Well, you could just see there is something alarming. It's okay. Have compassion for your own fearful experience. You don't like that your mother said that to you. You don't like that your boss made a snide remark. It's okay if the thing seems very, very minor. You're just worried. I had a young woman talking about acne and how she just felt like she almost didn't want to go out of her house because of her acne. And then she felt bad about being so upset about acne. This is sort of diminishing your own fear. It's okay. If that's what's there and present for you, then it's of importance. It doesn't matter if it's small or big. If it's small, how lucky you are. you're sensitive enough that this incident is small and it's caused you to be aware. Take a look. It didn't take much for you to sit up straight, pay attention. Something is important here is happening. It's a little whisper of something that you do feel afraid of deeply in life, and it didn't take much for you to be open to that, which is a good thing. So we can study fear. I highly recommend doing it in the presence of another person, whether it's one dear friend that you speak to and share honestly. You can have a facilitator of the work, a therapist who's really profoundly good at their work and working with fears for people without giving advice. Groups, there are free 12-step meetings everywhere in the world. This often is something where people just walk through the door and they can't believe there's a whole entire auditorium full of strangers that are all there because of a compulsion, Overeaters Anonymous or whatever, and it's okay, you're sitting there. It's also okay if you don't want to do that, if you don't want to call this addiction that you will forever have for the rest of your life, which I don't think is true. It's just sharing and being in a group environment where you can feel and listen honestly. If you can have compassion and feel open to what other people have experienced in the world, then you can have it for yourself. If other people listen to you with compassion, sharing, without doing anything, just being there listening, then you can do it for yourself. So step one is just to consider in an honest way what you have experienced that has really frightened you, or what you feel is scared of that's coming up in the future. Often they're related. And maybe write it down. First you can let yourself know what you're afraid of. Let yourself know. So in this exploration of fear, I am asking people to share with me, and I've made a little anonymous survey and put the link in here at the bottom of this video. And maybe you got to this video because you're already on my Eating Peace mailing list. And I'm sharing this survey there too, to just share what your honest feelings are. It may help to write this and know that I'm here and listening, because I want to address these kinds of things. I like to bring them up. I love hearing what people have to question, what they're wondering about when it comes to this compulsive behavior. And it brings a lot of shame. Compulsion of any kind brings a lot of shame about, oh my God, I can't believe I'm like this. I'm so horrible. And so maybe doing this in an anonymous way will help. And I will be reading it, and we'll just address it over time as the weeks go by. Fear. Fear is a very powerful thing to look at. I almost think if there was nothing else you ever looked at except for your experience of what has frightened you in your life, that is all that's necessary. Looking, exploring, resolving it, investigating those fearful moments, you will find peace. You will find peace. You will stop needing to soothe or comfort or ground yourself with your eating behaviors that seem so off. You can stop hating yourself and your body. All right. Lots of love, everybody. Let me know how it goes.